Hello and welcome to the 45 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1Baseball Week 9 Weekend Preview. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. This evening's episode brought to us by our good friends at S2 Cognition. S2 Cognition delivers a revolutionary approach to helping athletes understand how in-game decisions impact their performance from youth levels all the way to the pros. Love our partnership with the guys at S2 Cognition who are doing some great stuff for the NFL in addition to baseball. As always, I'm joined by a New England original, Aaron Fitt, and the two East Texans that got away, Joe Healy and Kendall Rogers. Gentlemen, happy Wednesday evening. How we doing?
Doing well.
Doing great.
All right.
The energy's at 20 right now, but it can change. We're one pitch away.
Low energy Aaron and low energy Joe.
Yeah, I purposely tried to put a little more oomph in my do it all right because like the first two responses I felt were pretty sad. So I was like, oh boy, this is on me now.
Joe got his first lesson in KR time tonight. I've actually been to give myself some credit. I've actually been pretty good about being on time this year.
Even better.
I had some other reasons that we took a while. So,
Kendall, when you said to give myself some credit, that reminded me of I'm on a text thread with our good friend Chris from Louisville, with like Kyle and Peterson and Tom Schofield and Dave Neal. The whole thread is just people talking crap at each other, and Chris from Louisville, Berkey, if you will, his favorite play on that thread is to text something and then put an emoji on top of his own text. So like he'll text something he thinks is clever and he'll give it a thumbs up himself. I'm pretty sure, Joe, can you rule on that? You can't do that, correct?
Well, okay, give me an example. Use it in a sentence, Runes.
Use it in a sentence. Oh man, I just had a flashback to Culbertson Elementary School, 1982, getting tripped up on the word title. So Berkey will say Coach Neal, aka Patrick Reed Jr., because he once played golf with Dave Neal, and Dave Neal had 2 4-irons in his bag, which I think carrying 2 4-irons is actually a disadvantage, not an advantage. But so anyway, no one responded because we're all on Coach Neal's side. So then Berkey will then thumbs up his own text there.
Oh, that's what you mean. Oh yeah, no, you can't. I'm going to rule against that. Yeah.
What do you got, Fitzy?
I'm cutting off, Joe. Please rule, please.
I mean, I just think you can't do that. I'm a fan of Chris from Louisville, no doubt. But I thought what you meant was he posts a message and then he sends as another text like a smiley face or something. No. And I was like, I don't know, that doesn't seem too bad. But no, reacting to his own text message.
That's it. That's the word, reacting.
Yeah. That's tough. Yeah, I can't allow that.
Fitzy, care to comment?
I award all of you people minus points for your stupid reactions and your stupid iPhone texts anyway. And your wall
that's right. The guy with the BlackBerry is feeling left out.
Garden.
Right
yeah.
That said, I mean, if you're gonna do the stupid emoji things or whatever, your reactions, I'm all for the Berkey approach. Like let's just lean into it here. I mean, let's be bold. Let's be bold. Much as it pains me to take Berkey's side.
The guy who still uses a phone where you have to pull the keyboard out.
Oh,
I wish I still had. I wish I still made those. I would dominate that thing.
By the way, I don't want to derail us here, but Ken Alderman is currently warming up in the bullpen for Ole Miss.
Ooh, how about that?
Well, I mean, desperate times.
I mean, and these midweek games, it can get a little dicey. So, boys,
let's talk baseball.
Let's jump in. So we've got 12 series to preview this week because of ties last week. Just as a matter of context, the fabulous Rune Dogs won Week 8 with a record of 6-2. So I mean, we're coming in with we're the hot ball club coming in. Unfortunately, that moved us from 9th place to tied for 8th place. But be that as it may, there's a lot of we're clearly the you guys know what they say. Don't let the Rune Dogs get hot. I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. So now I got 12 series to lean into. Here's what I want to do, boys. We're gonna go around the horn. And you're just going to pick a series that you would like to preview and have at it. And then the rest of us, what I would encourage us to do is not re-preview that series, but pick a player of interest. That could be redundant. That's okay. So Joe, you're going to go first. You just draft whatever series you want to preview from the 12 we're picking, and let it rip. And then the three of us we'll just pick a player of interest.
And if I may say,
yes.
I know we have 12 series on the sheet this week because we have to make up for the 2 ties last week, but we don't have to preview all 12. Let's keep it tight. We can limit ourselves to whatever, 10 or just however many, 3 times around the horn, whatever you want to do. We don't have to hit all 12.
Well, let's see how we do. Let's see if we're expedient, we'll hit all 12. If we're sloppy, we shan't.
I can't wait to hear Aaron's Binghamton and Maine preview.
Yes.
I sent some texts out about that one. I'm digging in. I did research. So Joe, have at it.
Okay, let's go LSU Kentucky right off the top. I mean, I think I'm fascinated to kind of see what LSU ends up being on the mound. They're rolling out the Skeens, Floyd, Christian Little rotation that was theoretically going to go last weekend, but didn't get to because they lost that third game. So I'm kind of fascinated by that. In addition to the bullpen being a little bit thinner, just given some of the injuries there. And on the other side, Kentucky hit their first speed bump last week. They lost both ends of a doubleheader to wrap that series against Georgia and really made Georgia look pretty good. That Georgia pitched better than they have since non-conference play. They swung the bats pretty well. They didn't let Kentucky kind of get going offensively and do the Kentucky kind of stuff, running and bunting and the inside game, all that stuff. They got Kentucky out of their element. And the thing I think about with the Wildcats is I can't anticipate them falling apart so much they don't make the postseason. I'm still pretty strong about that, but we've gotten kind of excited about the idea of, hey, Kentucky's number 1 in RPI and they've rolled off this fast start. Well, I think we talked about on the episode, one of our recent episodes, spend a lot of time talking to Mike these days, so I forget what's said where, but we got kind of excited about that possibility, but the second half of their SEC slate, I mean, really starting now, is brutal. And so if they're going to host, they're going to have to flip some series where they're going to be the underdogs. And so I wouldn't put my money on this one because they're going to Baton Rouge to play LSU, but they're going to have to do it at some point if they want to host, even with the RPI where it is. So, why not now? One other factor with that is that this is a Thursday series. Kentucky played 2 games on Sunday last week, so they're in a rotation situation where they're not really exactly it'll just be interesting to see how they handle that because everybody's going to be on short rest, and in some cases, somebody's going to be on extra short rest just because of the way the scheduling sets up.
Love it. Fitzy, player of interest in this series.
Let's go Jackson Gray, Kentucky. I think Joe made an interesting point about the Kentucky style of play. They like to push the tempo. They use the speed game, the inside game, the bunting, the running. This guy leads the way when it comes to that kind of attack. The speed game, he leads them with 14 stolen bases. I think that we're going to see a good test here. We're going to test Tommy White. We're gonna test Jared Jones, the guys on the corners, and make them field some bunts. And I think that's maybe the one recipe to attack LSU. That said, I'm picking LSU, but I'd like to see that how LSU handles that Kentucky small ball game.
Yep.
Jackson Gray's on the all bicep team too, by the way.
Nice.
Medium.
He does his hammer curls, huh?
No doubt. No doubt.
No, I respect him for that.
So does
Kendall?
Runes. He's kind of like Runes. Runes,
yeah, that's right.
does those big hammer
Medium.
curls.
Let's shred it up. What do you got? Player of interest, KR.
I think for me, I'm looking on the LSU side here. I think Ty Floyd. I think when you look at LSU, I mean, we can sit here and talk about Paul Skeens, but let's talk about guys that as we get closer to the end of the season, like really have got to step up. You look at Ty Floyd over the weekend against South Carolina, 4 runs in 3 innings. He just hasn't been, great this year. He hasn't been awful. He just hasn't been great. And so I think for LSU, for those guys to kind of get all the pieces in the right place as we go down the second half of the season, they need some guys to step up in the weekend rotation. Is it Christian Little? Is it Ty Floyd? I circle Floyd just because he's been around the block a few times, and I love the stuff. But again, I want to see how he does against Kentucky this weekend. They need a big start out of him because I do think he's one of those guys that he has such good stuff that if he can just kind of get in a groove, I think he can finish strong and establish some consistency. But right now, it's just kind of a mixed bag of everything. So that weekend rotation outside of Skeens, to me, is still very much a question mark.
Yep. I'm going to go Jared Jones. If I'm Kentucky, I'm going to bunt more at Jones than Tommy Tanks. I think it's pretty easy with the third baseman. You just move him in, and just like camp Tommy Tanks out there. But I would bunt right at Jared Jones. Now, of course, Jay Johnson's got the best defensive first baseman in the country in his back pocket, so that's nice. And here's the thing: Jared Jones could also hit 4 home runs in this series, so he's a very there's a lot of outcomes available for Jared Jones. Fitzy, pick a series, please.
All right, we're going to keep on moving down the list here. Wake Forest, Louisville, big ACC showdown series here. I'm excited about it. Road test for the Deeks. They've passed really every test that they've faced this year, home or road. I mean, they've proven that their style of play translates because they can adapt their style of play. They can hit the long ball. They can really pitch. They defend a lot better than they have. They actually haven't hit that great in conference play, and it hasn't mattered. I mean, they just keep on. They swept 3 straight series now. I guess it's shortened 2 game sweep against NC State. But I mean, they're sitting here at 12-2 in the league, and their bats haven't really even gotten going in conference. That said, I don't know that they're going to have Nick Kurtz this weekend. I think Adam Cesari, both those guys are still kind of day to day. It feels like an opportunity here. Louisville feels like it's catching Wake Forest at the right time. And, at home. And it feels like Louisville, this kind of series that Louisville gets up for. It's like that, like Kendall talked about earlier this year when Louisville faced A&M. You just kind of knew that Louisville, like Dan McDonald, master of motivation, they were going to have their A game when they faced the Aggies, the team that knocked them out of the postseason last year. I feel like Louisville has its A game this weekend against Wake Forest. And I feel like Louisville finds a way and wins that series at home.
KR, player of interest.
I'm going to go with Carson Liggett. I mean, I think this is a series. I think these two teams split the first 2 games. I think the big guy for me is Carson Liggett for Louisville. I saw him earlier this year at the Shriners College Classic, and he was really good on the final day of that tournament. And guys, if you look at what he's done so far this year, 41 strikeouts, 12 walks, 1.22 ERA, and 8 starts. The big question mark for U of L coming into the season was, who's going to be their weekend rotation, A, and B, how good were those guys going to be? And, Ryan Hawks threw really well against Boston College last weekend. And Carson Liggett, I feel like guys like on the national level has kind of quietly put together a really good resume as a pitcher. Frankly, it's an All-American-esque, stat line right now. So I think he's a big key in this series. I think if Louisville can split those first 2 games, they can go into Sunday with Liggett. I think you're feeling pretty good about yourself, especially with Kurtz out of the lineup potentially.
Love it. I'm going to go Christian Knapczyk as my player of interest. I want to love Christian Knapczyk, but he's doing fine. He's not doing great. He's third on Louisville's team in runs scored. Like, he has less runs scored than games played. And I'm holding him to a really high standard. But if Louisville wants to be like an Omaha team, Christian Knapczyk's got to be like a baller, like jump off the field at you. And he's a nice player right now. I think he needs to be more than that. So maybe I'm being a little unfair. I just think he's a better player than he's played statistically so far. And again, to your point, guys, like, this is vintage Louisville. Just rise up and play their brains out this weekend. So give me, eyes on Christian Knapczyk. Joe, player of interest, please.
I'll go Sean Sullivan. Him being as good as he's been has really been a boon for Wake Forest. I mean, I think when we all kind of held our breath a little bit when we knew that Teddy McGraw was not going to be a part of this team, because you knew what Rhett Lauder was going to give you. There was hope about Josh Hartle, but we were still kind of waiting to see it from him, right? And it turns out that we have seen it from him now. But Sean Sullivan being able to step in and be as good as he's been for them has really given that rotation a little extra something. And so I think that's kind of what sets this team apart, especially against a team like Louisville that, yes, the pitching has been better and the offense maybe has not been a classic Louisville offense, but when Louisville is really cooking, that's where its bread is going to be buttered is offensively and making things happen. And so in previous years, they'd go into a series like this, maybe in a year where Wake Forest doesn't have this kind of depth. And you're like, okay, let's just do what we can against Lauder. But then the next 2 days of the series, maybe we can eat a little bit. With the way this Wake Forest rotation is shaped up, especially with Sullivan, you can't say that even for a good team like Louisville. you're not. There's really no day on the weekend against the Deacs where you really feel super comfortable in being able to score runs in bunches. At least not with what they've shown so far.
Hey, by the way, boys, go ahead, Fitzy.
Just wanted to jump in because he mentioned Josh Hartle, and I want to run this comp by you, Runes, you in particular, because it just occurred to me recently watching Hartle. The vibe that I got from him a little bit with like the slot and kind of just the look and the pitchability, I get a little bit of Josh Spence, and I'm curious if you see that at all.
Yeah, so their pitches are different, but
They
you're
are,
right.
for sure.
Yeah, but you're right. Like kind of like an athletic lefty, not a stiff lefty at all. Like they're both loose and athletic. It's not over the top. It's kind of sidearmish. Yeah, I'm with you. Like very similar. Spence's thing was
the premium changeup, which like Hartle has a good changeup, but it's not like Spence's changeup.
Yeah, and Spence, I don't know anything about Hartle's move. Spence had a joke of a move. I coached against Spence in junior college, and he once picked one of our Phoenix College Bears off, and I'm not exaggerating. Our runner didn't move. He actually didn't know he was picked off. Like that, he was still standing when the first baseman dug him. Now, those things can happen to the Phoenix College Bears at times, but it was so good. The move was so good. I like that comp. Hey, by the way, boys, on Wake Forest, because remember they played a doubleheader on Sunday. I saw something on Twitter. Maybe one of you guys shared it. They might not do their normal rotation this weekend. Like it sounds like they're going to do Louder on Saturday and Hartle on Sunday, and maybe Keener on Friday. Because Sullivan, they did Hartle Sullivan in Game 2 of the doubleheader. So yeah, so they're a little out of whack rotation wise this weekend, which also gives Louisville a nice opportunity. But we'll see. Well, nothing formal yet.
I mean, and that's how deep is Wake Forest? Like, no Teddy McGraw. We got these other three guys. Oh yeah, here's Seth Keener. He's got like a sub-1 ERA or something, and like he's got real stuff. I mean, they're crazy. I mean, they're crazy deep on the mound. It's really nuts.
Yeah. By the way, if anyone's listening and they can get me a photo of Tommy Hawk's high top Air Jordans, I'm looking for that. I'm seeking that picture. So, Kendall,
you should wear those shoes. You should wear those high top shoes.
Like just I should do that. I should broadcast.
Yeah, wear some high top Jordans.
I've got some special shoes for the postseason just in case. I got low top Chuck Taylors, and I've got some Vans. I've stepped my game up. You and I will not be caught in my blue New Balances this year.
My wife is not real happy about this purchase
because they're not free. They're not free.
They're like the Carolina blue Jordans to match your Rasheed Wallace jersey, Kendall.
I have not gotten the Carolina blue ones, but that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I will, for the postseason, for the record, I will be wearing my Asics with 100,000 miles on them.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Every day. Like a NIL
Joe,
deal
do you want me to bring you a
about.
pair of shoes to Omaha?
No, I got shoes. I told you. Look at these bad boys.
Oh, here we go.
Man.
Yeah, look at that.
Suckers right there.
ASIC, baby. Where's our
plenty
deal?
of tread left on that tire?
Look at the flexibility of this guy, by the
Seriously.
way. Joe Healy.
Wow. Man, maybe we need Joe leading the press box calisthenics this year.
Look out for that tweet tomorrow. Joe Healy will not be available this weekend for SEC coverage.
Groin pull.
Pulled oblique.
Yeah.
Kendall, what series would you like to talk about?
I'm going to go with Tennessee and Arkansas. Rumor has it that Dave Van Horn and Tony Vitello will not be arm wrestling at the front gate before the game. But
disappointing.
This ought to be a fun series. I think when you look at both of these teams, obviously this is a big weekend for Tennessee. I think if you're Tennessee, and I think we talked about it in the pod the other day, that we all, for the most part, I can't remember Joe's answer, but I know Aaron and myself both feel like Tennessee will make a run here the second half of the season. And I think if Tennessee's going to do that, it needs to start now. I think you go on the road to Arkansas to a series where I feel like both programs are going to be a little amped up after, kind of their recent history. And I just think when you look at the series overall, it's about Chase Burns getting dialed back in. I think for Tennessee to win this series, you got to have Chase Burns go out there and give you a strong start because I think Arkansas – with Hunter Holland, you really can't discount, even against Chase Dolander, you can't discount the way that he's thrown, especially with that breaking ball. Hagen Smith started for him last weekend against Ole Miss. Will McIntyre has done a really nice job for them at times as well. They've kind of figured out the bullpen. So I think for Tennessee, the big key for me is Chase Burns. And I think for Arkansas, the kind of the X factor for me is a guy that we're not even sure is going to play yet, and that's Jared Wegner after he got hurt in midweek action. If Arkansas doesn't have him, that's a big loss going in a weekend series like that, even at home.
What happened to him, Kendall?
He jammed his thumb. They said it's like precautionary that he missed a game, but we all know, like, if you jam your thumb, I mean, you say like 2 days later, oh, we'll be back in 2 days, but I mean, easier said than done.
Yeah, interesting. I'll go player of interest in this series. I'm going to go Hagen Smith. It just feels like Arkansas's position player group is really good, and you can trust them, but their pitching equation is very specific and very narrow in scope, and Hagen Smith has to succeed in that formula. So, again, like, he has to succeed against Tennessee. He's very talented, but give me Hagen Smith. Joe?
In the same vein, I'll go Dylan Carter. Like, he's their most important traditional bullpen piece. If you're not going to include Hagen Smith there, because he's kind of a different genre of reliever, but Dylan Carter's kind of your traditional bullpen guy, and they're going to need 4 innings out of him over the weekend in some form or fashion. It might be 4 in one game, it might be 2 in 2 different games, it might be 3 in one and 1 in the other. But they just know they're going to need that kind of output from him, and they only have so many cards to play. To your point, Runes. And he's one of the big ones. And so, what they get from him is important, yes, but it's also that they find the right spots to deploy him, because you're right. And they have a pretty narrow path on the mound, and they've kind of expertly navigated that. I give them a lot of, it feels like year after year, I give them a lot of credit for kind of navigating these waters with their pitching staff. And he's got to be a big part of it.
Fitzy, the New England original.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this pretty simple here. I'm going with the Chases, Dolander, and Burns. These guys are due. They're due to bust out and have, I think, monster performances in a big series. I don't think they've been pitching that poorly. The results haven't quite been there. This week, I think it's time. I think that it's just gut call. They're too good. They're too talented not to get better results, and I think it happens this week.
Yep. All of us are wrong. The key player to this series is Kevin Kopps. He is, and he forever shall be. Very good. Well done, boys. All right, before I do my series, one more sponsor to mention, Blast Baseball. If you're ready to dominate at the plate, Blast Baseball is trusted by more MLB and college teams than any other hitting solution. The Blast sensor attaches to the knob of any bat, providing real-time feedback with every swing. Go to blastmotion.com. Enter the code D1Baseball at checkout. You get $10 off. I actually think Fitzy doesn't have a real cell phone. He has a Blast sensor that he's trying to use for text messaging, and I'm kidding, sort of. Boys, I'm just gonna do it. You left it there for me, and I'm gonna take the Maine at Binghamton series, the America East Showdown. The Maine Black Bears are 9-0 in the league. Binghamton is 5-1, and they also have a $60 million stadium, which is hosting said series. And so you guys know, I've got a. You don't know, maybe you know. I've got a deep in the weeds America East contact. I texted him. Here's what I got back. Binghamton better pitching, Maine better offense, Binghamton better defense. 2 F's in defense. Dang it, we got to spell better. So that said, I'm going to pick Binghamton, and because pitching, they have a senior named Gabe Driscoll. It's a great name. He's 4-0 with a 2.64, 8 starts, 44 innings. So the Fighting Gabe Driscolls, the Binghamton, they're Bearcats, correct?
They are.
Yes.
Okay.
With a C.
With a C, not to be confused with a K. Joe's alma mater. So there you go. Maine at Binghamton. Give me the Bearcats with a C. Joe, go ahead. Player of interest.
Quinn McDaniel, Maine. And I'm sorry, I
second
took him
sacker, right?
For everyone, just because. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
He made my digest a couple weeks ago.
I actually, I don't know what, jokes aside, I don't know what position he played until just now, but I am aware of him because I feel like I see highlights of him on Twitter all the time, like, Maine putting out highlights of him. So there are a few things I like here. One is that he really feels like the guy that makes them go. The average is almost 400. He's getting on base at almost 600 clip. He's walked 40 times already this season. He only has 91 at-bats because he's walked 40 times. He's only struck out 19. He's got a little pop, 7 doubles, 8 home runs. He's swiped 15 bases. And I think kind of best of all, he's a Maine guy. Played his high school ball in Maine. And that's, I kind of looked up and down this roster as I was preparing for this to make a pick in this series. And Like there aren't, it's a lot of New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and they go down into Florida to get players. But the fact that their best guy is a guy from the state of Maine is pretty cool. So Quinn McDaniel is my choice here.
Great place to vacation, Maine. Not a great place to play high school baseball. That's just my first impression. Fitzy, what are you saying here?
Vacation Land, actually, the state nickname. It's on the license plates.
I'll be there this summer.
Yeah,
gotta love that. Player of interest.
I saw Quinn McDaniel last summer in the New England Collegiate League All-Star Game, and he was great. He was I wrote him up there. He's athletic, powerful, really good player. But I'm gonna give you a player for Binghamton, Thomas Babalis, the Friday night starter, veteran left-hander, just a competitor. A guy who's been around, eaten a lot of innings, kind of sets the tone for him. I'm going to take the Bearcats at home, mostly just because I want to jab our buddy Christian Arrow, the producer.
It's CG, that's right.
Who pressured me into including this series in the picks, and I said, all right, fine. Yeah, you're right. We'll include it. I'm going to pick against your team. How's that, Chris?
Eat it, CG. And is there a more fun name to say than Thomas Babalis? I mean, come on. That's like out of Seinfeld or something.
It's a pretty good name.
Yes, it is. Kendall, what do you got here?
I'm going to go with my man Jeremiah Jenkins for Maine. I mean, who doesn't love it? Who doesn't love a 6'4", 240-pound left-handed hitter that can mash?
Well said.
Jenkins is hitting 380 with 11 bombs and 40 RBIs, 515 OBP, 1.275 OPS. And by the way, at 6'4", 240, I'm expecting his bar fight meter to be like up here. Fair. He's from Maryland, man. People from Maryland know how to bar fight.
That's right. Well said.
I think the key we can agree in this series is going to come down to which program has made more College World Series appearances. So, sorry, Binghamton.
Black Bears.
That's right.
By the way,
on the College World Series plus minus, Maine has a big edge in this one.
Big edge. Our boy Shotgun Spratling may be at this series. I know he asked me where he should go. This was one of the candidates he was considering, and I said, you know what, it would be really cool to have you there. So we'll see if he can make the trip up from Jersey.
What's funny about that is I'm not so sure Binghamton's like an easy drive from outside of Philly.
No, it's a little bit of a haul. But Shotgun's intrepid, guys. You know this. Road warrior.
To give you a quick Shotgun Spratling story, he called me one time, like 9 a.m. He was in a ditch on the interstate on the way to Fresno.
In a ditch.
He, like an animal or something ran in the middle of the road, and he pulled off and ended up in a ditch. They couldn't get his car out. So he said he was stuck at a truck stop all day.
So you want to work in college baseball?
The high on Friday in Binghamton is 84. So Shotgun picked a good week.
Hashtag Northern Baseball.
And for you people that didn't go to UNC like myself, intrepid, the definition characterized by resolute fearlessness, fortitude, and endurance. And an intrepid explorer, which is a great description for Shotgun.
That's a great definition
well done,
for
Fitzy.
a word.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Dictionary app right there. Joseph, take us to the 5th series, please.
Let's go. I'm looking at my options here. Let's go USC and Oregon State. Let's go out west.
Okay.
I think this is kind of a prove it series on both sides, right? So with USC, I think we've kind of been waiting. They keep winning games, and we're still not quite sure what we're looking at. And yes, they have the Stanford series win, but other than that, we're still waiting on them to get into the meat of the Pac-12 schedule. And so while Oregon State isn't off to its best start, we've talked about that. A, this series is in Corvallis. That's always going to make it tough. And B, they're coming off of a big series win against Oregon. And it feels like maybe this Beavers team is starting to put some things together, had a good weekend on the mound. And again, like I said last week, that rivalry series against Oregon felt like a potential jumping off point for Oregon State. Turned out to be right on that, just kind of, because the whole blind squirrel theory. But this feels like a moment where, okay, USC, if you're for real, this is the kind of team you're going to have to beat in Pac-12 play to prove you're a postseason team. Oregon State is more talented. Oregon State has more pedigree. They kind of have a history of even in years they get off to slow starts, kind of finding their stride. And USC has a lot to prove. So it's one that I'm going to be fascinated to see, because if USC wins a series, I think we have to kind of, yes, we have them ranked, but I do think we have to kind of maybe elevate what we think about them at that point, because they really would have started running up the score there. And if Oregon State were to take a series loss here, I do think it starts to make us have to reevaluate what we thought coming out of last weekend, which is maybe that a corner had been turned.
Fitzy, what are you saying for a player of interest here?
Guys, I'm going to go with Ben Ferrer, the veteran Oregon State bullpen weapon, former USC Upstate Spartan. All-American last year, was kind of hurt heading into the season, was kind of a wild card. You look up, he was really, he's been good now. He's made 9 appearances, 14 innings, not walking. He's got 1 walk. Classic Ferrer, just to pound the zone. But he was great this past weekend against the Ducks. I think he was a major factor in that series and the couple of games that they won, I believe. And, he seemed like he's kind of back. He's back to being the big time weapon that he was last year. And I think that's a huge difference maker for this team. It's really built more from the back forward, that pitching staff. I think the bullpen, clearly the strength of that team. Ryan Brown's been awesome. I think Brown and Freer's a dynamite 1-2 punch in that pen. And for a team that doesn't really have, the frontline elite horses that Oregon State has had many times over the years in the rotation, I think you can get by with a really good bullpen, and I love theirs.
Love that. Kendall, what do you got for a person of interest here?
Yeah, I'll go with Garrett Forrester for Oregon State. You look back at the Oregon series, and he had a quiet day in the first game, but he gets a big hit in the second game, and then the last game he hits a home run, 3 hits, 2 RBIs. He's one of those guys that has fluctuated a little bit this year, but he's supremely talented. And I feel like his production against Oregon kind of sets him up pretty well for a big showing at home this week against USC. I'm kind of circling Garrett Forrester as my X factor for the Bees right now.
Oh man, so I'm going to pick a Beaver too. That means none of us picking a USC Trojan. I guess if you're going to pick a Trojan, you'd have to do like Austin Overn or something, the kid that's on pace for 100 triples this year. But let's not do that. Although I did read a cool article about him with the football. Who wrote that? Was that anyway, I digress.
100 triples would be pretty good, by the way.
Who is?
100 triples would be really good.
That would be good. That would be a record. I can promise you. Boys, give me Micah McDowell. So Oregon, Hank Hager, who's the SID at Oregon State, is one of the best. And he's got a great nugget that Oregon State is 17-1 when out hitting its opponent. And, I think probably a lot of teams are that way, but Oregon State has an offense problem. And it puts a lot of pressure on their pitching. Give me Micah McDowell, left-handed hitting outfielder. He's from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Who doesn't love that? And he's been hot. He's actually had a really good year all year. He's got 2 home runs and 7 RBIs in the last 3 games. He's been really good, and they need people to add to Travis Bazana and Garrett Forrester. So give me the Nova Scotian, Micah McDowell.
I like it.
I'll just throw a USC player out there. I think it's Tyler Stromsborg for me. I mean, so much of what they're doing on the mound is kind of works around what he's able to give them. He's thrown at least 6 innings in each of his last 5 starts. He's thrown at least 7 in each of his last 3. USC has a pretty strong bullpen, at least statistically so far, but he really kind of sets the tone and allows them to use that bullpen smartly. So for a USC player, that's the direction I would have gone.
I like it. Fitzy, what series would you like to select here?
Well, we're going to go South Carolina Vanderbilt here. Showdown in the SEC East. We'll see how the Gamecocks do in a big-time road test. I mean, now we've talked about it. Now they're kind of in the teeth of this SEC schedule. They built a really good record in the first few weeks of SEC play against maybe the bottom half, I would say, of the league. If you can break it up into halves, now we're into the meat of it. At Vanderbilt, who's been awesome all year. Mostly, I just wanted to talk about this series because I've got an Ethan Petrie piece coming tomorrow.
Nice.
And I wanted to throw a comp out there, guys. Again, I'm doing it again. I actually think I mentioned the other day when we were talking about this series that I got like some Chris Bryant vibes from Petrie personality wise, and talking about Petrie with Monty Lee. It occurs to me that he's actually got some Chris Bryant in his game too. I mean, you think about it, both of them kind of played third base, played some corner outfield, 6'4", big bodied, strong kids who actually have some field to hit as well as huge raw power. But also, I mean, Monty pointed out to me like this kid is more athletic than you think. He runs better than you think. He stole 32 bases in high school, I think his senior year. Bryant was like that too. He was like a sneaky good runner, and good athlete. They both actually have big arm strength. Petrie obviously like up to 95 off the mound or something last year. He's a true right field profile or third base, kind of like Bryant. Like it's just, I actually feel like, I know it's lofty praise. Chris Bryant is one of the best college players I've ever covered or seen. But I kind of see it. I kind of see that kind of a tool set and a skill set, and I think it's pretty exciting.
How about that? Bryant is being a Vegas kid, and like, where is Petrie from? Is he country or is
Florida.
he just from? He's a Florida kid.
Yeah.
Interesting. Whatever he is, he's fun. Petrie is a blast. So Kendall, you have to do a player of interest.
Yeah, I'm going to go with RJ Schreck. We talk so much, and I'll use kind of Notre Dame as an example. We talk about teams that, really old players go into those programs and do really well or have breakout campaigns. How about RJ Schreck? Hit 288 last year at Duke. Did hit 8 bombs, but didn't have overwhelming numbers. Guys, in conference play for Vanderbilt right now, RJ is hitting 404 with 5 homers and 23 RBIs. That's pretty good. And so RJ Schreck is the one for me I'm kind of circling. And by the way, Vandy, this was a team that opening weekend at Globe Life, we had some question marks. David Seifert and myself, we both had some question marks about their viability as an offensive lineup. And this is a lineup, guys, that's hitting 334 in the SEC right now in conference games. That's really good.
Very, very good. Joe, who do you want to go for player of interest?
I'll go Will Sanders. He really looked the part last weekend against LSU, and unfortunately that weather delay knocked him from the game, and we didn't really get to see how he dealt with, another time through the order and dealing with middle innings and late innings. And so I'm kind of fascinated to see assuming he is in the rotation again this weekend. And Noah Hall is out again, by the way. So there's a little bit extra pressure there, but so assuming he's back in the rotation again this weekend, I'll be interested to see, does he pick up where he left off last weekend? Does he really look like a changed pitcher versus what we saw the first 6-7 weeks of the season? Or does there a little bit of a reversion back to that version of Will Sanders? Because if he's that guy we saw early in last weekend start against LSU, it kind of does change things for the positive for South Carolina, because that was a different guy we saw, but it was such a small snippet that there's still, I think, some reasonable questions to be asked about whether that's real or if that was a little bit of a small sample thing in a game where there was a lot of juice in the building.
Yep. So the player I'm going to pick is Gavin Casas, because obviously he was at Vandy and now he's at South Carolina. Really couldn't get consistent playing time at Vandy, and now he's a really important player for South Carolina. He's not just a starter. But I'm also interested about Carter Holton. Like, he missed a start last week. Sounds like he's day to day. It does. I'm reading Aria Gerson's timeline here, and she's the Vandy beat reporter, obviously. Says Grayson Moore is on his way back. Andrew Dukanich is kind of a week away from returning. So as good as Vandy's been, there's reinforcements coming. But give me Gavin Casas. Kendall, you pick the next series, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go with a huge Big 12 series in West Virginia and Oklahoma State. I think, it's really funny. A week ago we talked about these two teams in the hosting mix. We talked about Oklahoma State being a host potentially, and West Virginia potentially being in the mix as well. All of a sudden, guys, West Virginia loses a series at home to Kansas. Oklahoma State loses a series at TCU. Oklahoma State dropped 14 spots from last week in the RPI. West Virginia fellas down to 42. They dropped 18 spots. So if you're West Virginia and that's kind of your goal at the end of the season, this is a series you really need to win. I think going into this week, I think the big key for West Virginia is going to be Blaine Traxel. He's a guy that had been really good for them so far this season, but gave up 6 runs in 5 innings against Kansas. He is a type of pitcher who is going to pitch to contact for the most part. And I don't think that's a great matchup against Oklahoma State and Stillwater, but we'll see how he manages that. I think the other thing for me, I guess the player that I'm watching in this series is Isaac Stebbins. You and I both, saw that game the other day against TCU where he just kind of ran out of gas. I'm just kind of curious to see, does Oklahoma State start to tweak their usage of him a little bit? If they kind of almost force someone else in there in that closer role in one of those games this weekend to kind of give him a rest. I'm very curious to see how he is managed moving forward, because right now, they're 2 weeks without Nolan McClain. At this point, you can't just assume he's coming back in a week or something.
Like it. Player of interest, I'll go. Yeah, you nailed it with Blaine Traxel. That, get off the tracks. There's a Blaine coming. Give me Ian Doherty of Oklahoma State. They've got to get Chase Atkinson some help. He looked really run down in the TCU series. That's Oklahoma State's catcher. He's caught like 27 of 28 games. It's not doable. Ian Doherty's probably the starter He's Atkinson is just a gutty kid. Doherty's maybe more toolsy, more talented, that type of stuff. They need both of them. You need two catchers, obviously. So give me Ian Doherty, player of interest. Does he come back? Does he come back from injury this week? Jose.
Are you guys open to a little bit of a cop-out answer?
Please.
That's what we're all about.
Literally any pitcher for Oklahoma State not named Watts, Brown, or Stebbins. I'm really open to it being anybody. Like, I don't care who it is. Like, if you guys decide amongst yourselves who it's going to be, but anyone other than those two guys, because to the points previously made, it's just so much of the success they've had on the mound is just those two guys. And that's not sustainable. It's just not. And I don't care how good your offense is. And this is not, this is a very good Oklahoma State offense, but I don't think it's one of the classically great Oklahoma State offenses they've had. So, they're going to need someone else to step up with little consistency. And there's no time like the present.
I will say real quick, I hate to interject here, but I will say about Oklahoma State, what's really interesting is Globe Life weekend, we're thinking, oh, God, this is going to be a disaster on the mound. And then you start the next few weeks, you're starting to think, okay, like I can believe in this a little bit. And now all of a sudden I'm kind of like pulling back the reins on that a little bit. Like I'm kind of worried again about this pitching staff as a whole. So it's just kind of interesting how this Oklahoma State pitching staff is just kind of a roller coaster. And, we'll see what happens moving forward.
I like it. Fitzy, who's your player of interest here?
Well, I'll give you another pretty obvious low-hanging fruit answer, but J.J. Weatherholt is just, he's a dynamo, and he's one of the best base stealers in the country. He's got 25 steals in 29 tries. I imagine they're going to give him a lot of green lights here. Oklahoma State does not do a great job controlling the running game. You mentioned Chase Atkinson. I think he's allowed 29 steals and 38 attempts this year. He can be run upon. And so we'll see if maybe, like you said, if Ian Doherty comes back and is in that mix behind the plate, does that change anything? But regardless, Weatherholt is he's so fun to watch, and he could have a big weekend here.
Very good. All right, boys, let's do. I like you had good counsel to begin, Fitzy. Let's do one more series, and then we will. Here are the 5 that are left: Coastal at Old Dominion, Stanford at Oregon, UConn at Xavier, UConn at first place, Xavier, mind you, Miami at UNC, and Auburn and Alabama. So let's wrap with this one. I'm going to pick Miami at UNC. This is a really important series for both teams. I feel like this is going to be a little bit critical. I feel like both teams are kind of spinning their wheels a little bit. Like Miami, really good at home, not very good at all on the road. You were swept by Virginia and Wake Forest. No shame in getting, you made this point earlier, Fitzy, in a different podcast, no shame in getting beat by those two teams, but you went 0 for 6. And, those losses start to accumulate on the resume. UNC they're fine, right? But like, this is about the time they kind of kicked in last year. So Miami at UNC is interesting. Can Max Carlson be a real ace? Alejandro Rosario for Miami on Sundays, is that a problem? Is that you're just going to ride it out? Both teams have 2 sets of stars. Miami with Kafis and Yo-Yo Morales, North Carolina with Vance Honeycutt and Matt Horvath. So it's a fascinating series to me. This is, both teams really need this series win, in my opinion. Joe, give me a person of interest in this series.
I'll go Gage Zeal for Miami. He's, amongst some of the issues they've had on the mound, when he's been good, he's kind of been like a light for them, because they don't miss a ton of bats generally as a staff outside of Andrew Walters. And Rosario, I guess, can too, but he typically isn't giving you enough length or consistency. But Zeal is a guy who can miss bats. He's just not been all that consistent. And so he strikes me as a guy that the best version of himself can be a guy that really changes the math for Miami on the weekends. We just haven't seen it often enough.
Fitzy, person of interest.
Yeah, and speaking of changing the math on weekends, for North Carolina, obviously that guy is back. It's Carlson, who was just really so steady for them last year. That's kind of what he was. He was a rock, occasionally brilliant, but mostly just kind of rock solid. And this year, he hasn't really been that. He's been up and down. But he's coming off maybe his best outing of the year, one of his best outings of the year. 7 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts on the road at Georgia Tech. I mean, and I've seen that from him too earlier this year. I mean, I can't remember if it was against East Carolina. I think he was terrific. He's shown flashes of just pure excellence. I mean, it's, what version are we going to get from this guy? They need him if they're going to make a deep run to be the best version of Carlson, or at the very least the steady version of Carlson. Maybe you don't need to have like the dominant guy every week, but they need him to give him 6 or 7 innings and really kind of set the tone for the weekend. And I think last week was a good sign, and I suspect he's going to be good again this week. I'm buying on Max Carlson.
Gotta love it. Kendall, what say you? Person of interest.
So I'm going to say something that's really impressive after I make a point. But CJ Kayfus for Miami is the one I kind of circle. He went 1 for 9 last weekend as a leadoff hitter against Virginia. Obviously, when your leadoff hitter is 1 for 9, you're already behind the 8 ball. I think what's most impressive to me about CJ is the fact that he went 1 for 9 in the ACC series, and the dude's still hitting 373 in conference. That's pretty, 373 with a 500 OBP in conference after having a 1 for 9 weekend. So I just can't imagine looking at that data. Like, I can't imagine that he has another weekend where he doesn't produce like that.
Yep. He's a really good player. I'm all in on CJ Kayfus. By the way, boys, the two of the other series, UConn at Xavier, Auburn at Alabama. So we know that the great Stephen Schock always picks last, and he hunts the teams that no one else has picked. Well, Stephen, here you go, buddy. 10 of us have selected the UConn Huskies. None of us have selected the Musketeers of Xavier. So, Stephen, there you go. Auburn at Alabama. This is interesting. 10 of us have selected host Alabama. None of us have selected Auburn.
That makes me uncomfortable. I want to change my pick. That makes me uncomfortable.
Fitzy, your team nickname is going to be the Pick Changers. I mean, the fighting PCs. Come on now. Trust your gut one time.
I like how Alabama's swinging it all of a sudden. I feel like maybe there was a get right game this week, midweek, and they're back to the wall. And I just, hey, I put my neck out there for Alabama in the preseason. Kendall has pointed that out. Actually, you've been pretty good about it, Kendall, not rubbing my face in that one.
Well, I feel like South Carolina kind of balances that out a little bit.
Yeah.
South Carolina's been way better than we thought they would be.
South Carolina and Wake Forest have worked out. Alabama so far has not, and so I'm going to go down with the ship.
I'm glad you reminded me, though.
It's now or never, though, Tide. Like let's go, huh?
Yeah, that's right. I appreciate that, Joe. You did that last week with Virginia Tech. I like that. The go down with the ship mentality. That's how we roll. So, boys, where are we going to be this weekend? I am going to be in Prescott, Arizona, but I do have the Evansville Purple Aces at Southern Illinois on Sunday from the home office in Prescott, Arizona. I'm looking forward to wetting my Valley whistle. I talked to my Missouri Valley confidant, Joseph J. Healy, today for some inside scoop. Feeling very prepared.
Missouri Valley multimedia star Joe Healy, I believe.
That's right.
That's right.
The David Letterman of the Missouri
Joe has
Valley.
a side job on Sycamore's baseballinsider.com.
King of all media, just like Howard Stern.
Joe is known for his work on the Belmont Bruins message board. That's where he really thrives.
All I'm saying is this: like, laugh at the bona fides all you will, but have any of you folks been to Abe Martin Field at Itchy Jones Stadium?
No,
I don't think so.
Is it bona fides or bona fides? How do you say it?
That is a debate for the ages. I've always said bona fides. I've heard others say bona fides. It's not a debate for the
ages. It's not a debate for the ages. The answer is bona fides.
So I have a theory.
It's not bona fides?
No.
Joe.
You've heard that before, though, Joe, right?
I have. Yep.
Like maybe if you're just trying to be a goofball, maybe you would get that
I've heard it from legitimate sources. Shout out to Chris Whittingham, play-by-play announcer for Inter Miami and MLS, and a producer on the Dan Le Batard show. He famously says bona fides. And for the listeners of our podcast who also listen to the Dan Le Batard show, they will know exactly what I'm talking about.
So it's Whitty's fault that I've got that, because I do listen to an occasional soccer. Yeah, he used to be on Grant Wall's podcast. So
right, yeah.
Joe, I have a very important question. This is actually extremely important. Mm-hmm. I feel like Itchy Jones Ballpark just sounds like a ballpark with like a really good concession stand offering.
My favorite feature of let's see if I have the photo still in my phone. Hang on.
I feel like somebody's grandmother is working the concession stand and the food is rocking.
They're literally baking cookies right there. On
Yes.
Oh, that'd be
Like
that would be
Greenie's
nice.
over there with a KitchenAid mixer, just mixing like chocolate chip cookies.
It's
She's
like
got the
going to
paddle
Jackie
attachment on
Robinson.
it.
It's like going to Jackie Robinson and they got the one guy manning the onion grill. Like that's all his only job
the
there is
chili.
to grill up the onions.
Yeah.
Like one of the times I went
chili.
to Jackie Robinson, I got a Dodger dog with like homemade chili at
Oh, that's
UCLA of
great.
all places.
Southern Illinois has stew in the concession stand.
That's right.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Joe.
that's Stu. But the best feature of Itchy Jones Stadium, which by the way, interesting little quirk. Itchy Jones coached at both SIU and Illinois. At SIU, he's referred to as Itchy Jones. At Illinois, he's referred to as Itch Jones.
No way.
So that's a little factoid for you. And I've asked people on both sides of that, and no one's exactly sure why that's the case. But my favorite piece of the ballpark at SIU, the sales team or the people that financed this ballpark on the fundraising side at SIU were really hustling because they were able to get this plaque put in the bathroom of the men's room. It says, "Your relief brought to you by Kurt Reed." So they
Come on.
That is amazing.
they sold some sort of sponsorship in the men's bathroom.
Kurt Reed is
That's
he's
awesome.
a single man because there's no way his
Yeah, I'm
wife
now very
agreed
curious.
to
Actually, I don't know if I want to
sponsorship.
Google Kurt Reed or not.
I gotta know the real story behind Kurt Reed. Can
He's
we
like
get
a
this guy on the pod
proctologist.
next week? Can we get him on the pod next week?
He's
please?
He's got to be a proctologist.
There might be a
Oh.
fake person too, like from the Seinfeld
Wow.
episode. Joe, where will you be this weekend? Are you road tripping or are you from the home office?
No, from home. I've been home a few weeks now, kind of recharging the batteries to get ready for the second half of SEC play. But Mark will be in Starkville for Super Bulldog Weekend.
Nice.
Between
That's a
Ole
big
Miss and
series, to
Mississippi
say the
State.
least.
So he'll be there for that next weekend. I'm back out on the road starting next weekend, but one more weekend at home for me.
Fitzy, are you watching games this weekend in a flannel bar in Durham with Kurt Reed?
Me and Kurt Reed. Me and a flannel bar.
Cigar bar?
Yeah.
Cigar bar with ESPN Plus on your
There we go.
Galaxy.
Aaron's in a little bistro with his plaid.
Bistro. We
His
got.
plaid.
I want to get a look at the Hurricanes up in Chapel Hill this week.
Nice.
I had for a long time Florida State, NC State circled on my calendar. I'll probably still catch them that series because I do want to know what the heck is wrong with the Seminoles and do they have any chance of fixing it? And also I want to get some more looks at the Wolfpack, a team that is my big midseason helium pick. I think their charge starts this weekend. But
is Highfield
that's kind of
pitching
a
good,
sneaky-
Fitzy, for State?
Good.
And
good.
Willison's pitching great, right?
Willison's been great. I mean, Logan Whitaker. I mean, they're pitching fine. I really like. I like the way their pieces fit together. I think they're gonna have a big second half. I've said that repeatedly now.
Yeah, I like it.
I have more information on Kurt Reed. Do you guys want it?
Sure,
Absolutely.
please go.
We're all in now.
He was on SIU's 1982 team. He was probably also on the 81 team because he was a junior college transfer, but on the 82 roster, he's listed as a senior. He was 6 foot 175 from Moberly, Missouri, and he played junior college baseball at St. Louis Community College.
He must have been a shutdown closer, like providing you with the relief that you need.
Yeah, maybe so.
Or like you said, Fitzy, or he's a proctologist or something. Like there's something there.
I'll solicit a little help on this. Just John Locke, if you're listening to this, text me and tell me give me the story behind this. So I'm going to solicit help on that for former, no longer SIU baseball SID John Locke. If you're listening,
I'm just going to text Lance
me.
Rhodes and ask him who Kurt Reed is.
And also,
what happened
John
to
Locke.
Itchy's why?
John Locke, you're listening. If you could explain the ending of Lost to me, that would be great.
See you working. Kendall, home office this week for you. What do you got?
I'm going to actually try to get up and see Missouri and A&M once this weekend. I actually want to get my eyes on Chandler Murphy again. David Seifert had the game that he pitched at Globe Live, so I've actually not seen Chandler Murphy in person. So I'm hoping to catch him this weekend.
All right. I like it. Boys and listeners, before we leave, remember, never a bad time to get a subscription to D1Baseball.com or SEC Extra. If you, when you check out, type in Kurt Reed and you'll get 50% off. Kurt Reed, 50% off. But what you really want to do is type in Save 23 and that'll get you 20% off. for all the great stuff that we have on the website. Gentlemen, enjoyed it. Happy Wednesday. Everybody have a great weekend at the yard, and we will catch you next time on the D1 Baseball Podcast.